Commissioners meeting budget workshop Monday, October 30th, 2017.
To get to where we're at.
You might have had an old schedule. We did make a couple of changes. Nice.
Assuming this is his. Yeah, that's the old one. So, we are here for our second go around of budgets and full board this morning. And we'll start off with the OPD. In the past, we've started with the revenues and go down the line with your highlights and some questions in, I'm sure.
Well, basically my pitch this morning is we're trying to run it under what's been appropriated. So far, I think we're doing fairly good in that respect. And we're trying to carry it over into 2018 by actually hoping we're going to be asking for less than we spent this year. If the creek don't rise.
Your county's public defense service, that a check from the state, or?
We won't know on that till November.
Okay. So I just see you.
That's 80-some thousand. If we get that. McClary's got. I mean, I was in Olympia last week, and they're scrambling all over the boards over there about McClary and what it's going to do. They don't know.
Yeah.
But everybody's lining up for their cut, and McClary's going to go first. It's going to be the WA that wins out. From our standpoint, our big thing is we're just trying to keep it under the wire in terms of what you appropriated. We want to do the same thing. The big thing this year in 2018 is going to be all our juvenile stuff will come up for renegotiation. All those contracts will expire. And I'm not even going to attempt to do anything on that this morning. There's no way to know yet. I've talked to Keith about that. My thing is I want to get started early. I'm not going to wait till the end of the year.
So cases filed are quite down from last year. And
I
that,
think so.
They're significantly higher actually than last year.
what says 217?
So for 2015, there was 595 cases filed total that year. For 2016, there were 662 cases.
Right.
Granted, these are just felonies.
Okay.
And then as of the end of September,
That's
2017,
yeah, I see.
588 cases filed.
Right.
We're
So
anticipating over 700 this year.
okay.
I think we're averaging about 63.5 cases a month. And that average is increasing over the past couple months that I've been tracking it. So we were discussing earlier, we actually have 35 Class A's currently in custody. We have 4 pending murders, 3 of them are through OPD. So those are numbers that we're going to be looking at into 2018. Those are going to be costs that we're going to have to cover. In the past, it's been mostly the murders that we've been worried about. Unfortunately, now it's shifting to the Class A's where those are going to be significantly higher. They're going to take time. If they don't resolve, those are going to be ones that are going to trial. They're going to be significantly more than hypothetically the murders will be.
Which one's Class A?
Class A's are murders, they are rapes, they are assaults, they are burglaries.
Okay, so the worst of the worst.
The worst of the worst, correct. And then if you shift over to the 2018, all of those numbers in that column are estimated. We're estimating the state grant that we're going to be receiving per what the state advised us that we're receiving is about $84,000. We're estimating through the two other MOUs we have through the city of Connell and the city of Pasco to be roughly $8,500. And then we are requesting 1.1 roughly for 2018 versus the 1.2 that we received for 2017. So we're roughly anticipating requesting $41,000 less than last year that we received.
Questions?
Maybe just a couple of quick observations. You started out by saying if the creek don't rise, well, when the population increases, that's almost the definition of a rising tide or creek. So it is rising.
Right.
And absent a significant decline in Class A felonies to offset that, it's going to take more people and more money to carry out the legislative obligations we have. Recognizing that one of the primary functions of county government is public safety, and that 70-some% of our budget goes to that. One, I don't think that McCleary or much of anything else will get in the way of the grant funding. It might be optimistic, but having spoken with a lot of legislators over the years on issues, there are certain holy grails that they don't like to mess with, and one of their fears is that if they start cutting back our funding for doing this kind of work, that they'll find counties refusing to do this kind of work, and they don't want to go there. They've said a couple of times they really don't want to enter that information. So I'm not concerned about the grant funding. I do think the costs are going to go up. I think it's a natural order. Population increases. I think the operation we have now is reasonably, if not very efficient. I appreciate that. And the numbers I'm seeing don't look unreasonable at all.
Larry, would you mind just kind of updating the board on some of the challenges with finding Class A qualified attorneys?
I sent out a announcement through the State Bar Journal, which is statewide, trying to recruit felony people. If nothing else, again, I was trying to put together a reserve roster. We never got a single response, nothing statewide. One of the things I'm concerned about now is the probable loss of one of my felony people. If that happens, I don't know that individual can be replaced right now with a Class A qualified attorney. The other thing I sent a memo on was I was actually thinking one of the things we might consider is if I can find a B and C qualified felony attorney, that we might think about putting together a contract that's less than what we're paying the rest of the panel right now, since that person wouldn't be doing haste. Get the coverage and save a little bit of money there. So that's a possible. I don't know yet.
That would be in addition to the four current that we have.
Because right now we've reached a point, we get down to the last 2 months of the year, we're spending almost on conflict overflow appointments. We're spending almost as much as we would be spending if we could structure that kind of reduced compensation contract, which would eliminate all this scrambling around at the end of the year trying to find people willing to take overflow appointments.
And that option is simply because you can't find a Class A.
That's right.
This is not the first choice option. It's the by necessity and lack of availability.
And I can't even find enough B's and C's right now for the comfort level to be acceptable.
Is there, I don't know what any of the requirements are for A's, B's, C's, etc., but I'm sure it's spelled out somewhere. Is there an opportunity for us to recruit somebody and assist them in developing their credentials to become an A and have a mutual gain there?
If I had the money to do that, I'd love to do that. I mean, I've talked to the state Supreme Court, I've talked to the state bar about the fact that we're not able to develop these rosters of competent people. We're not able to train them. They're coming out of law school by the bushel every June, but you can't hire any of them. I mean, it's ridiculous. I noticed last week when I was in a visit that the Supreme Court finally started to talk about what we're going to do with all these people that are coming out with 150,000 plus in school loans and there's no work for them. well, I got work for them, and I could teach them. I could member them. I could have them sit in the courtroom with qualified lawyers and sit through the requisite number of trials. But I can't have them do that for free. Particularly, you can't have them move across to the west side if you can find them over there willing to come to Eastern Washington and do it. It's really tough. I'm going to keep pounding on the door on it. I think it's a great idea.
Is there a statutory bar to doing that now?
Doing what?
To bringing somebody in and training them up, or is that simply?
No, I can train them up and still be within the rules. Because it only requires attendance at the requisite number of C trials or B trials or A trials. The case is tried through to a verdict. But it means they might have to sit there for 2 to 5 to 7 or 8 days until that verdict comes down. But once they get that one under their belt, they may only need one more, and then on paper they're certified. That's how it works. So I am looking at it. I'd love to do it.
Terry spends a couple of $1 million to train a pilot these days. They make them stay for 8 years to pay it back. So just a thought.
I'm sure we can throw that in there, right?
It's contractual, retirement. If they want to leave early, then they have to cover some of the county's costs. And it's just that the model has been used forever. So.
Anything else?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kyle, please.
So are you doing affordable housing and ending homelessness?
Because what I received was just ending, but we can talk about
Oh.
affordable housing.
Sometimes it's confusing for us too, which ones you're in charge of.
Yeah, we're up both.
Was this one maybe we just kept? Was this one we just kept? Get under. Ready? You want to read? Morning.
Morning.
Which budget you say you want?
We'll be talking about Fund 188.
Okay. And you're on 188 down.
Sure.
Okay.
And so with both of the funds, 188 and 189, money is put into those as a result of document recording fees and earmarked specifically for housing services for people that are at or below 30% of the AMI, the average median income.
So Kyle, sometimes I forget which of the, and I think the numbers come from the bills that supported or authorized in 2060 and 2193, is that right?
2060 and 2163.
2163, and this is the 2163?
The 188 is 2163. For each of the funds, the 2163 funds are geared more towards services. The 2060 funds are more directed for capital projects. And And so with the 2163 fund, we've got different housing programs that we've developed within our office. We've got a mental health housing program, and that was a result of it. Last year, during our presentation, Commissioner Peck had asked about what programs we had specifically for people experiencing mental illness, and we had some discussions within my office staff about developing that program. But since last year, we've developed it, and it's operating, and it's doing great. So we have mental health, we have disabled housing, so individuals with documented disability, a program for jail release program for people that are coming out of jails. We have an SUD program, and all of the programs, a program requirement is that they remain in treatment, and it's a graduated subsidy. So the first month we may assist with 100% of the rent, second month 80%, the third month 60%, and it's as needed. Not everyone needs 3 months. By and large, most of them have been. We get them out in the community, help them, assist them with the first month's rent, and work towards their ability to pay for their rent on their home. And with regard to the budget, I can have Tammy talk with you about how much money comes in, what the fund balance has, and those things.
So currently on 2163, we're just talking about the 188. Usually the revenue that we get is around $330,000 per year. Right now, we currently, as of September, have $456,870. So, and like Causes, the mental health is our new program, and it's one of our biggest programs that we have in the 2163. So it's a great one to have.
And it's been helpful. We've got one individual in my office is developing relationships with local landlords. Part of the problems that we've run into with some of the individuals that are in our program is that on top of the barriers, they just have multiple barriers to maintaining stable housing. In Franklin County, our vacancy rate right now is right at about 2%. So you have somebody who has no barriers. If I wanted to go out and rent a unit, I don't view myself as having any barriers to renting a unit. It's difficult because there just simply aren't that many units available. And so some of the individuals that we have multiple evictions, maybe multiple interactions with law enforcement, on-off medicine, those kinds of things. And so we've been working to try and develop relationships with landlords so that when one of our individuals stumbles or has a hiccup, they can just kick them out and work with the mental health provider, work with on kind of working around problems. And it's been pretty effective. There are some individuals that we've had in our program that, quite frankly, I've had multiple contacts with when we still ran the crisis unit, and their biggest barrier to staying stable was, on top of, I guess the primary one was staying in medicine, but the second one was stable housing. And so it's working.
Kyle's working despite the short supply.
Yeah, and there's and again, there's it's helpful working with the landlords. There have been some individuals that to get them off the street. We've worked with some of the local hotels where they'll charge us a monthly rate, get them off the street, and then we work with their their mental health case manager to move them to a more permanent, get them moved to a more, so they're not living in a hotel. Get them on the street, and again, they recognize that as long as they're on the program, they have to obtain services. They can't miss their appointments. They have to take their medicine. They have to participate. And some of these individuals, and I've seen, I believe that you guys had a presentation on Hot Spotters program. I think you're all aware of that. And so I participated in that team as well. And so there have been individuals that have been what are called super users of emergency services, multiple contacts with law enforcement, in and out of the jails, in and out of the psych hospitals, that we've had in these programs that have helped keep them stable.
So, kind of feedback what I think I heard you say to make sure I got it right, because it's more optimistic and encouraging than I expected. One, an expanding local economy probably has more document recording fees, so revenues remain strong, in fact increasing. Despite a very short vacancy rate of about 2.2%, you said you're still able to find places to place people. All of that in spite of the fact that you've added a mental health component which increased your client load.
Correct. And this was one, these programs had a sunset clause in the legislature had extended that. So I think they extended it until 2023. And again, there's talk about trying to move to having the sunset clause removed and just have it be permanent. That I think there had been some talk last time too about increasing the document recording fee. That didn't pass, but they did add an additional time to it.
Obviously, they're aware of it to even boost it to 2023 sunset.
Right.
Step in the right direction.
I agree.
So, Kyle, since there aren't any real obvious brush piles on fire there to talk about, let me just ask, I'm not a fan, as you know, of government getting into business ahead of the private sector, whether it's building rental properties or anything else, but sometimes the private sector either can't or doesn't want to provide the kinds of facilities. Are other counties that maybe don't have the success rate that you do, are any of them looking at publicly funded and publicly built homeless structures?
Well, and it's interesting, I didn't have a chance to read it. I got an email this morning from the state, and there had been a housing commission that this was the first time the state had weighed in on a tiny home commission. Yeah, and so I logged into it. Was on waiting for me this morning, so I haven't had a chance to read it. So I'll be curious to hear to read what the state's perspective on that. But again, it comes down to money as always. Is I think a barrier to these developments coming up. But it makes a lot of sense.
Anything else on Kyle?
And so just to comment briefly on the 2060, which is the 189, and that's that fund is driven by a steering committee, and the steering committee had met earlier in the year and decided not to release any funds, and which has happened. We do that periodically if they're wanting to plan for a bigger project, and so sometimes there won't be release of funds for a year or two to build the fund downside in hopes of being able to support a larger project.
Well, that's really what drove my questions, because I expected you were going here next, and if you're withholding those funds and those are primarily for capital purposes, then it kind of, at least I think a reasonable person could see an opportunity for a public-private partnership where instead of the public owning a portion of those structures, you do it like they do to attract airlines to small regional airports. You put in place a combination of local money and grant money as a guarantee, so if the airline doesn't fill enough seats, then you backstop their losses. And you might do the same thing with a homeless housing or public housing kind of scenario where you're not buying into the building, you're just providing guarantees of a certain number of spaces filled.
Right.
It's just a thought.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that would be.
We're able to keep this committee full with volunteers.
Pardon me?
You able to keep this committee full, your steering committee?
Yeah, it actually, Keith sits on it, and we want representatives from each of the cities. There's been a couple of cities that aren't represented, smaller cities, but it's not for lack of us trying to get something.
All right. Anything else? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hold this up? Yeah. Good morning. Good morning.
When would you like to start?
What little money you have. Yeah.
Well, we normally.
Start with all the reduction requests.
We just found out Thursday afternoon that we're going to be receiving the reimbursement from the state for interpreter reimbursement again this year, and it actually has gone up a little bit. We're receiving $21,594. It's not a big increase, about $3,000 more, but every little bit helps. And that is really the only revenue that we have.
I would indicate that you'll see there a request for a guardianship monitoring program for a half-time individual. We included that again as we did it last year. However, it does not show up in one of the final sheets. The reason there is that we understand the reality of Benton County not having approved the other portion of that this year. That it's not going to happen. However, it represents something that Superior Court believes is important. We create these guardianships, we sign off on them, and they become our responsibility to review. These folks are, by definition, vulnerable. We're taking away their powers to guard their own state or other personal matters. And so we left that on there simply to show that it's a matter of concern, and for that reason, understanding the challenging environment that you folks have for election district.
Exactly right. It's talking about a challenge. Actually, your 165 budget is just straightforward.
It is. We've requested a couple of increases. One is in the professional services area, as we have to pay for interpreters or additional costs related to trials or guardianships. And then we've also requested an increase in our arbitration fees and $500 and operating rentals or leases of $1,000. Now the $15,000 we've requested under professional services, we didn't receive that now. When we were able to get by through the year, that's great. We
aren't able to, we have to come back to you.
So Pat, are any of those professional services discretionary? That was kind of my sense. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
no, it's fine.
We are working right now on a contract for interpreter services for our routine dockets. We currently have one for our criminal docket, but not for our Mondays, and our preliminary dockets throughout the week, which we think might save a little money. Instead of interpreters coming in and naming their price, we already have somebody locked in to a contract price that meets with the state reimbursement and the state fee that they require us to charge.
So one of the things that you all have taught me over several years of sitting up here listening is that sometimes we think we've been successful by meeting a statutory obligation or state standard, but that there are unintended consequences and costs downstream. So if we just meet the standard, then it triggers some sort of an obligation or cost somewhere else. So under these professional services, are any of the shortfalls in your estimation, whether it's guardianship or others, likely to drive hidden or unforeseen costs elsewhere that would make this a better investment than dealing with the risk of those unintended costs?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
If we, as I said, if we start to run short in these areas, we wouldn't want to deny those funding of those different items, but we would come to you and ask for additional monies throughout towards the end of the year next year.
I was really thinking, and that really does answer what I was asking, but I was kind of thinking more in terms of level of service. You can meet the minimum standard of service, but if you go to the next incremental level of service, it costs you more up front, but there's a back-end savings. And those are the kinds of things that I don't see easily from my side of the table. You're obviously a lot closer. So I would just ask that if you see opportunities for investment up front where we can reduce backside costs, I'd appreciate you kind of waving the flag for it.
Fairly stated, and I think guardianship will fall into one of those categories going forward. Again, it's simply not on the table for other reasons this year. What we've done as a bench is directed the folks who help us out, some volunteers, some staff, to forward those reports to each of the judges, and we rotate so that we can hopefully catch up in our obligation to monitor those things precisely for the reason that you said, so that we don't buy and delay one item creating two or three. Right.
Report. Like you said, pretty straightforward. And any additional increases if you need it?
Under our 170 budget, which is the federal government, we have our salaries, benefits, levels with regard to IT and cell phones, and the administrative fees associated therewith, and also the adult drug court. With regard to salaries and benefits, I believe that there's not going to be an increase in the benefits, medical benefits this year for staff. I just saw those came out last week, so I believe we're stable there. We'd like to be able to communicate with administration regarding the opportunity for COLA. The bailiffs have already entered into a contract for 2018. The non-ARCs have not. And so we'd like to be able to proceed working with Harley and Keith on that. And Benton County, I don't know where either side is at this point.
I've been talking to Loretta and Lexi about that to get something moving on the non-ARCs for 2018.
Our biggest concern was the medical benefits, to make sure we had those covered up for January 1. Looks like there's not an increase there. We would like, if there is an increase in COLA, to have that prior to the first of the year. The drug court, we currently, Franklin County is still operating at the 30-person level. Benton County went up to the 45-person level. And we're encouraging you to increase the number of participants for Franklin County. And we're also requesting, we've done this sound like a broken record. For several years, we were requesting clothing allowance for the bailiffs, and through negotiations, it was suggested that we request it through our budget instead of putting it in the contract. And so we're requesting uniform allowances to cover jackets, 2 jackets per year for bailiff. And that comes to about $1,000 for Franklin County. And those would be issued by the court, they'd be purchased by the court. There's no concern about just giving a reimbursement check to the individual, and so it would be handled by our office.
So, let me start with the jacket issue. I think it makes perfect sense to buy uniforms for law enforcement for the same reason. I like the idea of us having something that is standardized and maybe a contract with a provider, and people providing those services can go and get their own that's properly fit and so forth, rather than just giving them money and having them go buy whatever. I'm not saying that's something I have to see. That to me makes sense. It gives a standardized appearance. We have some cost control and maybe some cost efficiency by running it all through one supplier. Something to think about at least. I just did a brain freeze on your first comment. What was it you referred to right before you got into talking about jackets?
Drug court.
Oh, drug court, right. that might not have been unintentional. So as I've said, every year we've had this conversation. I think drug court is conceptually great. I think it works. I think it's beneficial. I think it's worth the investment. The difficulty I have in supporting any kind of increases there is that the standard that I apply to other requests, I'd also like to apply to drug court, which is some sort of evidence-based or empirical evidence of what the rate of success is. I think that there's success there. I believe there is. But all of the statistics brought forward in past years have always included the universal population of people who have been through the program, and then identified the known tracked success stories, and it wasn't accounting for the people that we've frankly lost track of. It's been assumed, at least in the numbers I've seen, that they were all success stories as well. And it doesn't really pass the standard for me that I want to apply to all the other requests. So anything you can do to help get a little bit better tracking, and even if it was simply just a column that said these are people we can't account for, I can live with the fact that 50% of people we can't find because they've got a right to freedom of movement. Who knows where they're living? Who knows whether they've reoffended or not? I just don't want us to count them as having not reoffended when we don't know. Just put them in the we don't know category and just let me see the other numbers, and that's really all it would take to get my support for expanding. It's always been the hold up, and I've kind of given this speech every year, and 9 years I haven't seen that happen. So
we did speak with WSU to the initial research on our grant program, and had a conversation with them. I think the price tag was going to be about $90,000 to do a research on it, and we felt that was a pretty high price tag.
Well, I agree, and I'm not asking for any more research than has currently been being done. Just separate out the ones that we don't have a track on.
The state, the Administrative Office of Courts Research Division, and DSHS put together a report recently that included our drug court, and it was released a couple months ago, maybe early summer. Time's gone by quickly. And it did compare us to other courts in the state. I'm not certain that we're still identifying that population that you're talking about. And
Well, sure. Well, I hope you can appreciate that. I'm not trying to get hung up on process. There is a real, I think, valid statistical question here. If you got a population for every 100 people and you don't know where 50 of them are, but you count the success stories, those data are utterly useless to me.
I understand Ford's distinction between absence of evidence and evidence of absence.
Right. And so if there were simply a column that said these are people we can't account for, I'm willing to ascribe the percentage success of the population that is known and apply that to the unknowns, which I think is very generous, frankly, statistically. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. You know where it comes from.
I agree with you. It's not a complete.
Well, and it just makes it hard to defend being a strong advocate for a program that I think is good and being an advocate for more funding when other people have better empirical data and are being told no.
So what do you do with those numbers now of those people that you cannot find?
They're just not accounted for. We don't know if they're here or they're not here.
So you don't count them. So
Well, I don't. We're currently working on some statistics. Our drug court secretary resigned, and so we haven't finished them, our annual ones. And the drug court coordinator is working on them. He didn't have them ready for today, and we're hoping to have those figures included. The ones that we just can't. They're not on the radar anymore.
But in the past, they have been counted as.
We've identified, they probably haven't been counted because we've identified those that have reoffended and those who have not reoffended.
Right,
But
which is only
what we don't know is of those people who have not reoffended on our stats, how many of them moved out of state and how many of them can't be located.
And when you don't know if it's a productive lawful citizen living in Texas versus someone sitting in a federal penitentiary in North Carolina.
Yes.
Every year, I think we talk about it. For a couple of years, we talk about it.
Yes.
No, every year.
But it's important. I think it is important.
It's important.
Yes. And then somewhere I read where you asked for half the time, 15.
Yes, our guardianship monitoring program, GAL registry manager, currently is a half-time position, and we are needing desperately to move it up to a full-time position. We've asked for the last few years for the position. Benton County's budget is not open this year. They've identified that they won't open it up for position requests unless it's an emergency basis. So we're using one volunteer that we have to help out, and then we've had more judges jump on the bandwagon to try and get these out. There's annual reporting or reporting requirements when you are a guardian of a vulnerable adult or child, and that can range from a year to 3 years. And those reports have to be reviewed as they come in, and we have a huge backlog of those to be reviewed and monitored, and the monitoring to go on, make sure that people are reporting. Right now, we basically have a backlog of just reviewing the ones that are in compliance. We haven't been able to go back through the files and identify those who aren't reporting, which is more concerning because the ones who are reporting are following the rules. The ones who aren't, either out of just negligence or because they have something to hide, they're not.
I'm not going to go there. I was going to say something about unaccounted for populations in a statistical base.
That's right.
All right. How about your 710, 720 budgets?
Mr. Chairman, before we go there, Ms. Austin, could I just ask a quick question? Because it kind of relates to that one. It's actually broader too. Benton County is working on a 2-year budget cycle. Obviously, we're not. Does that, just speaking obviously for your department, you can't speak for other people, but does that pose any particular challenges for you? Would it be helpful for you if we were also on a 2-year? Or are there benefits, in your opinion, of coming here this year?
I think it would be more helpful if we had both counties on the same cycle.
Not necessarily 2 years.
I see juvenile justice shaking her head also.
Well, yeah, it kind of occurred to me that, that's doesn't seem like the most efficient way to do things. And when one county makes a change, I think it's incumbent on the other county to at least look at the change, why they made it, and if it doesn't place a burden on the other county and it does create efficiency for the bi-counties, then we ought to look at it. Thank you. I wanted to get that in discussion.
Hi, can I clarify one thing? You had mentioned, you were talking about some revenue, $21,594, I think you said, for some reimbursement. That's not the grant revenue you receive, is it?
It's actually not a grant, but it is the interpreter reimbursement money, and I think we put down $13,000 for revenue.
So it is that $13,000?
It is, and the reason I put down 13, which will probably go up a little bit, is that they're on a fiscal year, we're on a calendar year. So, how much did we brought in so far this year? We should have brought in about half of it earlier this year, and then under the new budget, we'll bring in about another half of it. So half of it would qualify as 17 revenue, half would qualify as 18 revenue, and then next year it'll come in after the fact as well. So, and I only qualify that I know I'm receiving the money on, because we won't know until next fall if we're going to receive money for 18-19.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
Exhaustion is always never wishing to overpromise.
I'm not showing anything in that line for this year so far.
We have had, so, we have this problem periodically.
We have.
Let me look back at this when we get back to the
If you have some dollar amounts that you could send me, I can do a search for dollar amount. Chances are it made it somewhere else. In fact, if I looked where it was miscoded before, it's probably there.
And there is a slight possibility that it was all spent in the fall of 16. Because we had a murder trial that took quite a bit of interpreter services. And then we will bill for July through December on this new reimbursement. So sometimes we eat up the whole amount of reimbursement in the first 6 months.
Okay.
So I'll go back and
we
see
can.
which ones those have been credited to which years.
Okay, I can figure that out. Thank you.
720 was the salaries and benefits that we just spoke about, and 710 I think is capital outlay.
Which we actually have in the, if you look up here, we actually moved that to the regular 165
did you? Okay.
budget. Because it's not really capital. So,
No, it's not.
So there's $1,000 that we have right here that we put over here.
We did look at that already.
So that number plus under 17.
Other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Musical share it, Alex?
Wow. Only a few people really need a place to spread out their insurance. Please.
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you? So we are not requesting any enhancements. There is a change of $18,123 to the baseline, and that's due from the formula of our operations. So the split between the at-risk youth population we've got in Franklin County, and then contractual step increases. So this year we had a bit of a surprise when we got the budget call letter, and that's when we usually go to OFM, the Office of Financial Management, and pull our numbers for the at-risk youth. Well, they neglected to ask us if it was okay, but they changed it. The way they report it now is 12 to 17, not the 10 to 17. And so we
Is that what drove the 18 you were talking about?
Yeah. So what happened, I got on Jennifer and I talked with Keith and Loretta and said, how do we want to do this? And so there's Denton County has done an amendment to the resolution for the split. And I believe, is it on for the 8th, Keith?
Yes.
So what we will do is go with that 12 to 17 population for 18 and just move that forward. And so that seemed to be the least disruptive. And
So Darryl, I'm not disagreeing with that path. I mean, it's logical, makes sense, but is there any insight what made the state think that 10 to 12-year-olds are no longer at risk? Is it just
it's totally the way they reported it. I have no idea what they did.
I didn't remember us changing the formula, and so when you said that, I thought we've changed it, and I don't remember it, so.
No, we haven't.
I'm glad it's the state.
Yeah, hopefully you'll approve that on the 8th.
Still capturing the ages, they just don't break out the 10 to 17, so we can figure that. They break it out differently now.
Yeah, more breakouts and probably more fidelity in the data. It's just that it fails to amaze me the way the state will make procedural changes like that and not recognize, as we alluded to earlier, that there are unintended consequences and downstream impacts that they're not thinking about. And in this case, when you run the numbers, it just turns out that it ends up costing Franklin County a little bit more.
Actually, a little bit less.
Okay. Well, I didn't hear that in there. I figured if I assumed the worst possible case, I couldn't be disappointed.
So in 2017, the split was 35-26, and so with this new formula, it's 35-53, which is just a 0.27 increase rather than.
Well, I'm glad I started by saying I support whatever it is.
Historically, it's been mid 0.8% change every year.
So it's So we'll just move forward. Hopefully we can move forward using that 12 to 17, and we'll just over time. That's what it makes sense to do that way.
So it affects the dollars. Does it affect the program effectiveness?
That's the new baseline.
Excuse me?
Does it have an impact on the program effectiveness? I mean, we're talking about how to categorize the dollar per dollar money as supported, but it doesn't change the program.
No, it's not going to change.
Again, the state makes a little change in there and triggers some other requirement. And only spend money A, B, and blue, and green money on people between this age range, so that's why I wondered if it changed.
Yeah, no, I don't see this much different from last year. And then the facility split remains the same at 72.
So the breakdown that I just handed out, originally when we submitted our budget, we did not have a resolve to the percentage split on how we were going to move forward. So when I submitted the original budget to you guys, the narrative, we went ahead and kept the split the same as 2017. Since then, we have resolved it, so the memorandum that I just handed out reflects the new figures in accordance with that new split. So when Maryland said the increase from 2017 to 18 was about $18,000, specifically the funding formula and then contractual differences.
And that's 18 across the board or just Franklin County?
That's just Franklin County. And that includes the admin fees. That's inclusive of everything.
Further? Does she have something else for us?
I do not.
Got an opinion on 1 year versus 2 year budget?
Yeah.
Is it found?
I'm sure you were going to say 3.
Is it because it was there that it wouldn't print?
That's always the weak point.
I saw somebody maybe pulled it up to print, but I didn't see it in your office, my office.
According to this, it takes us to a lunch
Or
break.
it's not on.
Well, I'm ready. My calendar is like 5 p.m. It's 8 p.m. or something.
Well, there's anything in our 680 that needs looking at anyway, is there?
Commission, didn't it?
It's like, yeah, 45.
No changes except for payroll, so.
Generating some revenues. Yes.
Get into the 700s and
Yeah, we don't really have anything in the 700 or 710 that's directed administration or commissioners, other than to increase our liability insurance. The request there for additional $20,000. These are simply just based off the WC risk billings.
720.
I don't think we had anything related to us this time.
There were some requests, but I don't know if you turned them in. I've looked in the book, like for the Hanford communities.
I think most of those, I just did trending myself and plugged something in based on, because nothing was turned in, but I think I looked at the data and made some guesses based on that.
Council of Governments assessment in the Hanford communities, those two. What about the drug task force and stuff? Change there.
Yeah, each of those I just went through and looked at, how much we had spent in previous years and estimated how much we were going to need for this year, for next 18 budget.
What's the mechanism when some other government entity of which we are a member increases their charges to the county? What's the mechanism for that to get captured in our budget? Is it your expectation that that agency would contact our budget department and notify them of that, or if they would contact you? Or if I'm sitting on that board, is it my responsibility to bring that back and say there's an increase coming? What's the right vehicle for that to happen?
A little bit depends.
I'm asking because I don't know. I've always kind of wondered how that gets in the budget.
There's probably not a single policy for all. Most of them contact our office. They send a letter to the commissioners or me that says, this is what we expect your assessment to be for the upcoming year.
So if I'm sitting on one of those boards and we're talking about an increased assessment, I probably should raise my hand and say, if you do that, you need to make sure that you keep doing it. Otherwise, we will not pay.
It's not an ideal situation, but the ultimate control is the legislative authority of the board.
Right.
Yeah, that's not ideal because sometimes you feel like you're stuck and you have to pay these things. The board of that outside entity has already voted. We've got that challenge we're going to hear. Biden assessment. They have their own executive board that's approved the preliminary budget, but it's dependent on all of the participating agencies that put that additional assessment in their budgets.
Yeah, which really kind of creates a clash of fiscal authority, because obviously they can't level those expenses on us.
Right.
It appears that our only alternative would be to say, well, we're not paying it. If you need to throw us out, throw us out.
Right.
Just for instance, I see where the health department was added $5K.
I don't remember approving that.
We haven't even gotten close to it yet, but I got preliminary budgets coming up next week. I think the fiscal Rome and I will meet with Jeff and Jason for the preliminary budget, and then our next meeting will be the full budget at the board. But I'm saying that same scenario, that question you're bringing up is they've added $5K onto us.
And it probably makes sense in a preliminary sense for us to include those numbers that Tom and his team have done, so that if we end up not supporting it, then we're not hurt by it. And that part of the process, I think, is fine. But it does appear to be a tendency for us to sort of get don't want to say railroad, it's kind of a harsh term,
The
but
cart before the horse.
you hear the barn door slamming, you know we're headed to the barn. I think I'll just use that sort of general guidance then, that when I hear a board talking about that, to say we understand that all of this doesn't exist until the state body of each county, it's not just us, approves it. So I want to coordinate with the counties ahead of time and get initial concurrence before you just assume that financing works completely.
And then come, council government's assessment also for.
Well, that's the one I had in mind when I was talking for exactly the same reason. Has the executive board taken that up?
Forget when, but it's soon.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a discussion because they lost HAVIC, and I think they were using HAVIC to pay the loan coordinators for credit and RLF, and now they need to come up. But no, they didn't charge HAVIC for that.
Oh, they didn't? No.
When you ask them, but all of a sudden there's a difference now. So.
Well, you might use the opportunity to mention to them that you can put whatever you want on here, you can have the board vote on it, but you gotta understand that the board doesn't have the authority to levy these costs. And you risk losing members if you don't have buy-in up front.
Well, Beaver and I are both on the same page as far as their budget there, so good conversation.
Also, Hanford Communities, I don't believe there's a rate last reduction because they added U.S. curriculum. And we had that this last year, so I hadn't heard of a raise there either.
The Council of Governments?
No, but they're switched over to Hanford Communities.
Hanford Communities.
I see there's 2863 increase. Or is that just a total?
That's just entirely based on how much we've spent in previous years. It's just my own estimate for how much it looks like we would need for 2018.
They have not
based on prior year spending.
Right.
No.
Correct.
Okay.
All of these right here, ones that I just input myself based on, other than the ones we talked about for juvenile and stuff. These are ones that I just put in just based on how much we've spent in 15 and 16 and how much we're spending right now. So it's just an estimate based on that. It's not a formal request by anyone.
Another sequential.
Yes. That's expense first and all this.
There's also index.
I'm sure I'm used to just seeing 172.
It just looks like we're spending more than the budget each year already.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Well, that works out for me because I have an appointment at 10:40 in Hamilton. So what time do we meet at?
I'd be interested to see if Tom could come in at 1:30 start time or whatever it is. After the lunch break, 1:15 or 1:30, if Tom could come in. That's all we have for the afternoon.
I will contact him and see if that's doable, but I don't know why that would be a problem.
Should we say 1:30?
Yeah. So
Okay, just makes it easy. Easy number.
Did you say 1:30?
please. This morning went rapid. Thousand Creek, Commissioner.
eventful.
Weather hold up for you?
I'll give you the details later. Yeah, the weather was great the whole time. So do we have a contribution to the
I think we're on board and everybody's got the paperwork where you want it. Tom and Tim ready?
Yep, already.
Good afternoon. We'll open this Monday afternoon workshop with 405 track operations. Give us any highlights you have of the revenues coming down.
Well, the anticipated revenue for this year and for 2022, unless we see something significant change, is going to be down a little bit. We've lost one of our larger motors, David Valdivia, which makes up close to about $10,000 a year of our it's kind of, we're not getting real clear answers from by the way they do one of his units compared to 2018, but past that, we don't know, and he's not really giving that information out to us. So while we're still cutting expenses, the revenue, that's taking a toll of the revenue. But of course, we have, events that happened in 2017 that were just, in 2016, that were one-offs, or events that don't really come back. But the good news is that even though the revenue is going to be down, the expenses are coming down still along with that. And then obviously we've signed the contract for private catering. Our chef is retiring. So we're still trying to wrap our arms around exactly what that's going to look like. We have an idea, but we don't have, kind of have to wait for that to happen to see, just simply moving to a different food provider is going to cost, what's that going to do? Is it going to bring in more business? Is it going to leave because they don't want to use that catering company? We don't know 100% yet on that.
So your 2016 midpoint is, well, your year to date is 1,341,000. Your year to date is 1,341,000. Is that okay? Then 2017 is $1 million, so that shows it down about 300,000 and some. Where are you at this point in 2017 on the revenue? Can you give us an idea?
So at this point in 2017, we're forecasting a lower revenue of about $300,000.
Okay, lower than 300.
That's if you take the whole year into consideration because we forecasted out through December. With Country Gentlemen possibly coming in earlier than anticipated, we're still kind of working on how that forecasting is going to look. But we have, since Country Gentlemen has come in, they've actually sent 3 parties our way for Christmas. So that's kind of a good thing. It might help make up. I'm not sure if it'll make up 300,000, but I think.
Because what I see is the 2017 working budget is 2.5 million, and for 18 it's about 2.3. So that's the 200 less.
We're forecasting about, and those numbers that you just talked about include the subsidy. When I talk about revenue, I'm talking without the subsidy.
Yeah.
So for forecasting for this year, I'm looking at possibly like 1.9 million at the end of the year without subsidy. And last year, at the end of the year, it was 2.1, almost 2.18. So we're down considerably, but we can tie that to those Valdivia advances because it's not only having him in the building, it's liquor sales that are associated with his event.
Okay, that makes a little sense.
So how do we know how much to add in, or how do you know how much to add in for subsidy in a future year? Because the subsidy was based on losses.
We forecast our revenue. So basically, we're forecasting for 2018 all of the events that we know are possibly coming back for next year, or we have contracted, or what we call is blue sky. So those events we're going after to try to make up some of that revenue stream.
So the subsidy amount is the difference between your expense line and what your blue sky event revenues are. Okay.
And also, I don't know if, I'm assuming everybody knows, but maybe I should assume, our chef who was scheduled to be on board until December is actually leaving November 18th. So that is throwing off, that we're only going to be getting the percentage of that revenue where the budget was written as a whole. We weren't anticipating that happening.
Sure. Your personnel costs should be going down too.
Yes, certainly is.
Yeah. Tom, do you have any sense, or either one of you, do you have any sense of what your personnel costs are going to, how they're going to change between, say, 16 and 18? Because 17 is sort of a wild card transition year.
Well, we're decided between 17 and 18 because I can forecast out my future months in 17.
Okay.
So with salaries and benefits, and there were some small changes we've made, like one of our banquet manager left as well in October. We hired a sales admin because we felt that that position was needing more than the banquet manager. We're going to come to gentlemen. And then we asked for an upgrade to our office staff person. So even with those changes,
I'm sorry, who
our
that?
office staff person, we have one staff person in our office who is we call her an office manager. She basically does all the billing and collects the money at the counter, answers the phones, does our payroll, does our expenditures. So with those small changes, it's about $155,000 that we're going to realize in savings from this year, what we're going to spend versus what we would have spent next year if Chef retired in May, if we had our sales and banquet manager through next year. So this budget, even though this budget that you're looking at doesn't really show well, it does show the country gentleman, but it doesn't show those salary decreases. Our revenue still looks like it's going to decrease $300,000. So even with that savings of $155,000, the subsidy kind of looks the same as this year, just on budget on paper, because we're just not sure how the whole country gentleman catering.
I think it's CG Public House, by the way. That throws me every time you say that. Were you counting 18 to include the chef through May, did you say?
Yes, the original budget that we turned in that you had.
So did you back that out to get the 155?
I did that too, right.
And for the 2017 personnel costs, did you assume that the last quarter was going to have the same personnel costs as, say, the second or third, so that you've got a true 2017 as opposed to this transitional 2017?
How I did it was I actually put the banquet manager's payout into 2017 and the chef's payout into 2017, so they'll both be paid out.
All the way through 2017?
All the way through the end of the year. So it's probably not the net savings you're looking for, because we do have those added costs in it.
Yeah, I didn't realize you had payouts through the end of the year for them. You said the banquet manager, you said something about somebody going to CG, or we hired somebody from CG?
The banquet manager actually went to Country Gentleman.
CG, okay. sounds like that might actually work to our favor, then we've got somebody working with them who already knows our facility and our operation.
So Greg is working with him.
So if you still had the larger client, I think you said Mr. Valdez or somebody. Valdez. If you still had that revenue, your forecast for 18 would be brighter than 17.
Oh, yes.
And so to phrase it another way, if you take that out of the equation, the transition to a contract catering operation on the whole is too early to know for sure, but it sounds like it moves us in a positive financial direction.
From every number that I crunch and every piece of data I have, I believe it's going to move the needle on positive.
And I heard that the caterer, the contractors had hired some or maybe many of our staff that were going to be leaving.
Quite a few of them have gone there.
So that goes back to the point about the general manager being hired by them. You've got people who already know the operation. I'm thinking about the transition and how smooth it is and how accurate our predictions are. And it helps to have people who already know the operation to reduce some of the uncertainties.
It is one benefit we're going to immediately see from our banquet manager going there is we do a BEO meeting once a week where everybody gets together and we talk about it.
What kind of meeting?
A BEO banquet order form, but just kind of have an outline of the event. He's going to be the person the CG sending over, so he talks our language, he knows what he's reading, and then those CG side of the business know what appropriate questions to ask.
And the reason I think all that's relevant to this discussion is because, again, it makes our predictions and our estimations more accurate because we're dealing with people who have been doing it previously. So imagine if you had a whole new crew that's unfamiliar with their operation trying to estimate these costs. Difficult.
We just didn't overstate or understate our too much and not knowing what was going on.
A lot of unknowns in the next year.
But we'll continue to bring costs down, which is that will never end.
Would it be unreasonable or unfair to say that the beneficial aspects of going to a contract catering, and I'm not saying that all the elements that it's all positive, I'm sure there's going to be some of both, but the beneficial, the net effect of that and the loss of Mr. Valdivia are kind of offsetting and relatively equal. We're still going to end up with a subsidy about what we have in the last couple of years.
No, I believe the subsidy will be, I'm always going to believe the subsidy will be lower because we're going to keep working to accomplish that. In theory, yes, but losing that promoter is sometimes, I mean, if we still have him in the capacity we do, therefore, my first 2 years, he was growing. He was, adding more shows and doing different types of events with us, not just the typical concert. So, I mean, there's such a dramatic loss for us. Even though we are offsetting some of it with the cost savings of going to front paper.
Well, I'm sure you've done what you can to keep it business.
We're still doing it.
Just a lot of unknown for 18 right now.
And it always is on our budgeting because, like I said, a lot of our contracts aren't signed yet. So it's just hoping that the people who were here last year are willing to come back this year. And then that we're getting that new business. And I think with our sales manager going to Country Gentleman, they're trying to sell too because the more business they bring into our facility, they get a better deal on the catering for the first year at least. So the more they can drive people to our business is going to help them as well. So hopefully we can fill up some of that midweek with some of these companies.
Because honestly, half the building, I mean, the side of the building that's utilized to pay the bills, the expo hall, we're booked. We're trying to, polish the arena enough to get people in there for some of the parties that we do. But all of our revenue comes from the expo side of the business, and we're booked in 2018 almost every weekend. So now we're pushing really hard to get booked in the arena through non-arena events.
So when you said polish the arena, you meant polish the concrete floor? Get nice and shiny.
Polish our very costly court floor.
Polish the concrete, stain it, get a nice and clean look.
We've got a few people who go in there and have some of their dinners and different events. It's just a little bit hard to sell. So we're going to continue to work on that, and if we can continue to improve that and get more people in and utilize the arena, it's only going to have a positive effect on us as well. So we're booked. I mean, it's not from lack of having business. It's just kind of doing what have to do and
We're booked every week.
pretty much every weekend in 2018 is booked.
Is that being the same as 17 and 16?
Summer's a little slower. Summer you get vacation or quinceañera or wedding reception or retirement party or birthday party. But the quinceañeras, they're coming in, I'm not sure why, but we're getting quite a few of those. So now it's just trying to get those bigger events that are going to help cover more of the costs. Because if you have a small party for 200 people, you'd rather have a book Valdivia dance that you're making $40,000 to $50,000 on versus need 6. So it's the type of events that we need to get in there to cover some of those costs. We can't just go after the same types of events just to go.
So the 2017 working budget, what was the assumed or projected subsidy for that year? Do we know offhand?
For 2017, the budget amount was $433,078 total.
Okay, and for the 2018 preliminary?
2018 preliminary, we're at $428,234 total. I truly believe it's going to be less than that.
But given the total scope of the numbers, it's essentially the same number.
Right, exactly. So it's just a matter of how our cost savings and how our revenues come in and how CG plays into that.
A lot of unknowns. There's a saying in business, I'm sure you've all heard it too, is that if you're not making money, you either need to spend less or charge more, or ideally both. I know you've been working hard in the cost cutting, and have you had an opportunity to study our rate structure and see if we're in the market where we should be?
We have. It's actually just I was working on that before I drove down here today. It's been since when I first started when we really reached out and analyzed all the other event centers in the area. So that is currently underway right now. And not just what it costs for the building, but a lot of the smaller fees that I think probably escape us a lot of times, what everybody else is charging, so we're in that market as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's 2 or 3 different numbers here, really, is what you'd like to charge, what the market will let you charge, what you need to charge to cover costs, and they're all kind of different. So I was speaking more to a market analysis to see if we're competitive. I mean, if we charge too much, we lose business. If we don't charge enough, we lose revenue.
On for the facility our size is in 2016, we were quite a bit cheaper than the average business in that size. But we still, just because we do have both the Slate, Wenatchee, right at our back door, we take their costs into account as well.
But that's actually good news that you have some headroom in your pricing. If you were at the top of the market and not able to generate sufficient revenue, that'd be a big problem. So that's good.
See, just a lot of unknowns this year at this point. So
So what was the subsidy again for next, for 17 and 18 you have budgeted?
So for 2017, we budgeted 433,078, that was total. So that was 216,539 each entity. And for 2018, we're budgeting 428,234.
428,234. Okay, good.
Just take this.
Yeah.
Slide that over here. Show you.
No, that's fine. I know it's on there. I just want to be here.
Just got to go.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that.
Again, that's budgeted, not what I plan coming in.
Yeah.
Just budgeted.
Any questions for the 450?
Well, I'm really reluctant to ask because I know I'm not going to like the answer, but I'll go ahead and be the dummy. From a budget standpoint, Tom, what can we do to help you be more successful? And let's just take capital investment off the table because we all know that that's the elephant in the room financially. But from an operational standpoint, non-capital, is there anything that we can do?
Yep.
And maybe now's not the time. Maybe you want to feed it to Keith and do it later. But if there's anything you want to share to the whole board, this is one of the few opportunities you get to talk to all three of us at once.
Well, I think it's going to be obvious what I would say. Probably, I brought two proposals to the board in my time as general manager that would have cost taxpayers no dollars, would only increase the benefit to the taxpayers and the burden that they have to have them in Center County.
You're talking about the naming rights?
Naming rights, as well as the deal to concrete the floor, which I understand very deeply sympathetic to the purpose of the dirt floor and get it. I'm just looking at it from the business standpoint. The business model would be a better model. If I could open up the arena to the same use of day use that the Expo has.
Okay.
But it doesn't fall operate.
That's a good candid answer. I appreciate it.
So, what makes you so sure that the concrete floor will be able to double up what you're, or get more that you say you are?
Just feedback from customers, our ability to host multiple events at one time. That right now a multiple event really has to be trade show, and it's something that would go in that would be conducive to working on their floor. If we had the use of the entire facility, there are quite a few shows that would cover that side just because of the seating capacity alone.
So, if I need to chase here, just ask you, do you think we can concrete the floor and put everything outside and make it all work out just nice?
I think we can put concrete in the arena.
Yeah, and then we have an arena outside that you've already somebody, have.
And we do have the arena outside. Now covering is going to be a little bit different monster that we could get to. I don't think it's really feasible to say they happen in conjunction with each other. I think the outdoor arena use could happen immediately.
Right.
I'm not sure if covering it could happen. In my mind, the way I would do it if I was doing the job analysis and cost analysis, we need to see the ROI on the concrete floor in the arena to then spend those dollars on the outdoor arena. But I think they will happen, and everybody will be happy. I'm not sure I've ever made anyone happy.
If you don't have the arena covered, you won't make everybody happy. But if you do, and you have a plan, I don't think it needs to be extravagant as what we have now, because seating and everything, there's different ways we can do it. But what I still see it, and whenever you have a rodeo event, or any horse event, or anything, there's 500, let's be realistic, there's 50, 60 horse trailers out there, maybe 40 in their booked hotel rooms. To me, that's good. And you have 4 or 5 of those a year.
Good 3. And it is good.
For the hotels?
Well,
Now, for us too,
I asked the hotels, to be quite honest with you, I asked the hotels during our last show, which is the largest show of the year, that happens in September, if they would, and they all were very agreeable on the front end, to track hotel room usage for that show. The numbers weren't even enough to report back to me on day. They kind of gave up on day 2. Doesn't mean that's always the case. That just means that was the case in this past September. The problem we face, and it's not my lack of reaching out and trying to get the business, we have 3 shows. So half of our building is setting for 3 shows. Now, we're able to lay our 40 floor down and open it up somewhat to the rest of the community to utilize whatever the expo's booked. But we turn away a lot of business. And there's a report I could run, I don't have it with me right now, and we're just getting really good at writing that report and capturing that data. We turn away a lot of business. I mean, that's just the facts. The facts, those are the hard numbers. We turn away a lot of business. Could I double year 1? No, I couldn't double. I'm not going to double our revenue. Could we get there? I wholeheartedly believe we could.
Could you double the 3 horse shows we have now, or I'm calling horse shows, whatever they are, really events?
I can't find anybody. No one, and all I've done, Commissioner, to be honest.
No. Can you double with what you say you can do if we have a small floor? Can you double what we get now? You say you can.
He said in time, yes, he thinks he
In
could.
time, you can.
Yes. What I'm saying is, if we concrete in 2018, 2019, I'm not doubling the revenue. I wouldn't want to say that, because you got to still be able to market it, work out pricing, kinks and issues, and I mean, just the marketing itself would be quite undertaking.
You'd offset the equestrian influence with it.
Right, because when you have a concert, like for example, our Christmas season, we're having huge banquets over in the expo side, and now we're having huge banquets over in the arena side with that dirt floor. We have a 2,500 person event that's coming in that CG actually brought us in the arena on that fourth floor. So yes, you can make it look nice and you can make it do that, but you have the labor that goes into having that floor put down and cleaning it and then making it look that nice. Or you could have concrete where you just put the tables down and there's your labor compared to putting that floor
And
down.
unfortunately, what we didn't know, the porta floor that I requested and you guys approved is performing as advertised. A nicer, more sturdier porta floor cost us about $2,400 to put it down and break it up. It's very expensive to accomplish that because of the weight, the dirt work required prior to it, and then just the labor it takes to get it down, covering 40,000 square feet.
The feedback I've heard, Tom, is that when you get a few hundred people in there, even walking around, let alone dancing or tromping, that you get an awful lot of dirt and dust that comes up through the floor because it's not solid. And clients have said they find that objectionable, and they go there once and they say they're not going to come back because of that. This really, and I didn't mean to get us off into a discussion about what we should or shouldn't do as a track. I was just looking for feedback from you about what we could do. I think you were candid and clear on what you thought from an operation standpoint. Obviously, there's political and other policy considerations for the board, but I appreciate the candid answer, and what you're describing, frankly, was one of the options on the table when we bought the floor, which was to build the outside arena, concrete the inside. So.
Well, I guess what I'm going there is, and you said that what we can do, is there any paper done on the outside if we can put a roof on it? Any cost analysis on doing the arena outside? We talked about doing
because we have the skeleton.
Right.
For the portable or the expandable structures to come in, there's a fee I gotta pay because there's surveys that have to be done because it wouldn't be what it is. So I haven't gone any further on that because of the cost associated.
I was in there for the show, the garage sale we had, and I could see the floor being very okay for that. But I understand if you're going to eat dinner or something, I think you're correct. It's not very comfortable for a dinner or a menu or something like that. So I do understand some of that and some of the other things we mentioned. Okay, well,
I guess on the offside of that, if you've got 3 horse shows, if you lost those, could you add more events into that arena to offset the horse show loss?
Yes, because those horse shows, I mean, there's a lot, it's nice to have them there, but there's a lot of expense in cleaning up those horse shows. We spend over $1,000 each time to clean up the manure and to get rid of it, and that's through a manure company who recycles it or does whatever they do to it. But you have the labor hours to do that. You have the packing of the floor afterwards, and then if our pork floor is down, because we try to keep it down during certain periods, so it's not coming up and down all the time, you still have to then put the floor back down or bring it up whenever that horse show comes in. So those 3 events that we have, I think they're nice size events, but I believe truly that we can make that up throughout the year by having like trade shows in that arena where people are willing to put their equipment or their booths instead of,
So Tiffany, just generally, what kind of revenue do we see from one of those, from an average horse event?
Well, these aren't your average horse events. Actra is a nice size, and they rent a lot of the stalls, so we make a lot of the money on the stall rental.
Okay.
So if you're just looking
So
at...
we would still make that money if the arena was outside?
Correct.
So what's the revenue just for the inside piece?
We charge them $1,600 a day. And they're not even paying that, they're paying $1,000. We're incrementally getting them up to our current livestock pricing.
So the revenue that's coming from the inside use is $1,000 a day times 3 days? $3,000. What's it cost us to prep that and re-prep it afterward?
Well, more than that.
So we're losing money inside when we hold those events. The revenue from the stalls outside we would have whether we use an inside or an outside arena. I mean, I'm not trying to be blunt, I'm just trying to get us to the obvious bottom line here, which is it costs us money to entertain a horse event inside. I would think that...
If they're, I mean, not if they're in real practical purposes, but if they were paying our going rate of $1,600 a day for live, which we're subsidizing it.
Even at $1,600 a day, that's $4,800 for 3 days, and it costs $5,000 to undo and redo that arena. Those are the numbers she's giving me.
$1,600 a day worth of rate, almost worth.
So back to my point, which is if we were to concrete that floor and you were able to, in time, over a few years, double revenue, then theoretically you could dedicate a portion of those increased revenues to improving the outside arena with cover and lighting and rearranging some of the stalls, realizing you're still keeping the rental from the stalls, and probably rent it for a more attractive rate and have a higher profit.
Yes. And get the outdoor arena can be rented at a rate that people in that industry can afford.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Is when I said rented, I meant rent the outside arena. You still got the stall revenue, which is the same. And now you're renting the outside arena, which is all profit because you weren't making any money renting the inside arena. And you've got the inside arena producing revenue. I mean, strictly leave out the policy and politics and niceties part of the equation, just looking at the numbers. To me, it's a business no-brainer. But I just wanted to be sure I understood, and I wanted to repeat it back to you in case I was misinterpreting or misappreciating what you were saying.
You know, there's another issue that's coming at us very quickly. I don't know if we were here, so I'll just go ahead and say it. The barns. Those barns that we have back there are 20 years old. I'm not putting any money into it right now because we're not making any revenue on that business. It doesn't seem like a sound business.
When you say the barns, what do you mean?
The stalls.
Okay, stalls.
You know, so if we're going to put money into the stalls, we need to be making money off the stalls.
Well, presumably enhancing those would go hand in hand with covering and enhancing the arena.
Yes, that would need to be done.
And running the arena north-south instead of east-west so that it's larger.
Correct.
Okay.
But I'm getting to the point quickly where I either need to drop a lot of money into those stalls to get them more functional and in better shape than we are now, or possibly see if I can sell them for scrap. Because what we're going to end up having is there are these big buildings that look like they're caving in and falling down on the back of our property, which is aesthetically pleasing to anyone else that's coming to the facility to use it for a non-livestock event. They don't necessarily want that in there.
So I went over there a couple months ago and walked through every single one of those. I didn't see a single one where the roof was caving in, so I'll make a point to come over the next couple of weeks and you can show me, because I obviously...
It's just the rust, the panels inside, the horses are they're tough on.
No, I don't disagree. I'm just saying I have bad eyesight, because I walked through every single one.
The roofs aren't literally falling out.
Okay, all right.
The roofs aren't a problem.
I didn't even see much rust because it's all galvanized metal, but You can show me. I mean, I certainly trust you. I just missed it.
Right, I think that's about all damage we can do until we find out more.
Well, one more thing with the ice rink. You said that's things. We got problems with it. We got you 1 year under contract. So what's happening?
Well, the ice rink is an interesting monster in itself. We have 7 compressors that manage the mechanical piece of making ice. I'm not real well versed exactly what the compressors do, but we had one go down. We had to bypass it just because of sheer expense of fixing it. So now we have 6 running it.
But that cost to do that was $14,000.
$14,000.
Just to get us.
And the glycol replacement.
Because the system has the glycol lines running underneath. It's kind of this rate was meant to go into a mall parking lot, come up, go to another mall parking lot.
So, Tom, I know the answer, but since we're on the record, I need to ask you. Our total revenue from that facility, we're taking a portion of that and setting it aside for a capital account to make these major improvements, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
So, a lot of the needs in the community is ice rinks, horse arenas, things like this we lack of. We have that, but we don't have the money to fix it up and keep it going and keep operating.
Well, an ice rink, we're able to keep the ice rink going. It's just, as this old ice rink that is no longer being produced breaks, we have to come up with more expensive, colorful ways to.
So if the link passes,
I'm sorry?
if the link passes, the link is the thing on the ballot for another ice rink over there.
I had a meeting with that organization, the Tahoe organization, 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
And very invasive. I feel they wouldn't really give me an answer if that other sheet of ice goes in with the link. I don't believe we will keep them, because that way they will be able to do all of their hockey on one location.
And in fairness to them, they don't know yet availability of cost over there.
Correct.
But I've talked to a few folks, and my impression is that if it's available, if it's cost effective for them, they certainly will. And I don't know that I could blame them for a brand new facility where they could do everything together.
Right, and logistically it makes sense.
Gotcha.
And I hear the same thing. I've got a couple people that I know that are involved.
But we've already put a business model in place, so we know exactly what we'd have to make per month to recoup that revenue by utilizing the pavilion for events, especially some of the smaller events that take up space in the expo hall. That Murphy always shows up when as soon as you look at the small event, the big one wants it. So it wouldn't necessarily be a devastating loss financially. I do believe we could.
You could put your 100, 150 patron dinners in there.
They would just need some air conditioning.
That's right. It is.
But I do believe, from what I've been told, pull that dehumidifier out. If we could get someone to buy the rink and the dehumidifier, we could put an air conditioning unit could just slide right into the dehumidifier's place. The ductwork's all done and ready.
Yeah. That would be the best of both worlds again.
Well, it's a facility that serves a badly needed purpose right now, since the private vendor who was providing that was put out of business.
That's subjective, though.
Let me rephrase. In my opinion, after having studied it and spoken to the family, the county built an ice arena and put them out of business and put them into bankruptcy. That's just my opinion based on a lot of research. Aside from the benefit it's a legitimate benefit, high value benefit to the people in the hockey community. Aside from that, I don't see much in the way of redeeming features for that facility the way it's set up. If they can get equal or better accommodation in the link, I think it's an opportunity for us to put that building into a higher and better revenue generating purpose without harming the folks that are in that program now. So if it all should work out that way, I think that's a smart way to go.
Again, knowing it would take, it wouldn't be automatic overnight. It would take a little while to After up and running and start generating.
Nothing happens overnight, and you're right, there's gonna be some capital requirement, but we've got some bonds that'll be maturing and going away, and there might be an opportunity for some .09 investment if there's a good business plan that shows that we can actually lease that facility and recoup.
All right. With that, we'll move on to the 450 fund. Thank you. What do you want? All right, kind of the same thing, kind of give us your highlights and.
Okay, it looks like for revenues, we should stay about the same as what we were last year. We're projecting just a little bit under the transient rents that we were expecting this year, just because the first 2 years when I came up with projections, we had no winter at all, and this last one we sure had a big one. It cost us a little bit more for irrigation repairs, winterizing. Most of the revenues will stay just as is. When it comes to the expenditures, I adjusted a few of them to more closely match what our historic values are for those budget lines. The main proposal that I would have today is to install electrical metering into the electrical stand ground park and start charging monthly guests for electricity. We wouldn't start charging the full amount immediately. It'd be a step-by-step program we put in over years to give them just a fifth of their total electrical usage for the monthly. They would pay a fifth for a couple of years, 2/5 of it for the next couple of years, moving up to full amount of that.
So let's talk about that for a minute. If you go to another commercial RV park in town, is your electricity included in your day rent?
No. I actually did a survey of most of the bigger parks around the area. That would be comparable to almost all of them. Here, in fact, charge electricity as well as having our standard rate of big meter charge.
Okay, and then next question, how does our standard day rate compare with the day rate for these other commercial parks? Are we higher, lower, about the same?
A little bit higher. Just about the same as a couple of the premier parks, but lower than the ones nearby.
So if it was on a 5-point scale and 5 was the highest, we would be a 3.5 or a 4?
Yes.
Okay, so there's some that are cheaper and only a few that are more expensive.
Right.
Okay, those ones that are more expensive and the ones that are cheaper, they're all charging for electricity as well, right?
Correct.
Okay, and so if you were to subtract the electricity use each month, would we still be at that 3.5 or 4, or would we suddenly be one of the cheapest? Since our electricity is included, you're comparing apples and oranges, right?
And that's part of why we would want to start meeting currently.
I understand that, but the question was, if you took the electricity value out of our daily rate, right? What's our daily rate?
For a full hookup, it's $37 back plus tax.
Okay, and how much of that do you think, if they were to pay their electricity, how much would that be on a daily basis?
We wouldn't actually be charging people on a daily basis.
I understand. Let's say somebody was there for a whole month. How much electricity do you think they would use?
There is a variable amount based on what time of the year it is.
Sure. Give me just a high and a low. Okay. Take an average.
Let's see. The high would be about 135. The low would be $48.
Okay, so probably somewhere from, what did you say the high was?
132.
132. So that's only about $4 a day. Okay. So if you took $4 a day off of our rate, would we still be at a 4 on that 5 scale, or would that drop us? See, what I'm trying to get to is how close are the rates in town? Are we all within a few bucks, or is there a big difference?
That's a good question. Right now, I'd say we're, KOA is probably most directly relatable. Right now, they charge $410 and include power. So
I'm sorry, they charge how much?
$410.
Well, on a day monthly. Well, okay, I'll take a monthly. They charge $410?
Yes, and we charge $450 for the monthly.
We charge $450. And we pay for the electricity. Does KOA also?
On some of them, most of them they actually meter. I believe they're trying to work towards metering all of them. It's just an investment.
Sure. Their $410 rate, does that include power? Do you know?
Yes. So we have a couple rates though that do that.
Okay, but if they charge $410 and that includes power, and power is about $4 a day, so really they're to make them equal with us since we provide power, they're really at about $5.40.
Closer to that.
And we're at
$4.50.
So, okay.
It'd be us just meeting the industry standards, basically. Most people are.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, and I agree. I think metering it, if the installation cost could be amortized in a reasonable length of time, if it didn't take a long time to pay for it. But what I'm concerned about is that based on this information, we're actually undercutting the commercial vendor across the street, and I don't agree with that. But if we were to install meters, it would be easier to put us on an apples and apples basis.
Do you know what amenities the park has that we don't have? Do they have a swimming pool or?
They do. They have a swimming pool, a hot tub, and a playground. For some
convenience.
Oh, and a store on their campus. However, the location of their business does make it a little difficult to make it to the store. So the other thing is our location is very prime.
Yeah, well, the amenities are valuable to some people and some not. I'm not a big fan of pools in January myself, not the outdoor kind. Just to speak to your point. No, that's a good observation.
Do you have any idea on their KOA's vacancy rate, if they have vacancies? I mean, are we resulting in them having vacancies, I guess is kind of what I'm leaning to.
No, due to the size of our park and our current occupancy rates for both monthlies and transients, we don't affect them much at all. They have a much larger park than we do, and I send them almost all my overflow. As soon as I get a call at Humboldt, I'm sending them across the street if I can. Wanted to go to Franklin County Pocket one right.
When you full, is that when it's 100% spots are filled?
In the full hookup, yes. Because some people want a full hookup and they don't want a power water only that do have available, that's when I would send them across the street in the full hookup.
Tom, do you know what it costs to put in metered electricity?
Keith sent me an email this day with a breakdown on it. I don't have it on top of my head. How much?
$11,500 for both the meters and the installation.
For the whole park?
Yes, for all 46 of the sites that would be doing. We wouldn't include the 13 on the home run road section because that's transitory. There's no long-term monthlies out there because there's no service.
So last statements seems to imply that the people who are there long-term would actually have their own account and billing with the PUD, or would the PUD bill still come to us, the park?
It would still come to us. Different parks charge rates a little differently. Some of them charge a flat rate directly to the customer. Other ones, they do it based upon the bill. I am trying to get more information from other park owners, but unfortunately with short duration, it would certainly get exacts.
So certainly once we have meters on the long-term spaces, we pretty quickly learn what the true day cost is for us, and we could add that to the cost of the day stays. So when the park was built, from my recollection of the minutes of the board that was here before I got here, the talk was that this was really about providing a place for people to come in for a day or two or three for events at the track, not a mobile home park disguised as an RV park. Do you have any thoughts about that, and whether or not we ought to be moving more toward a day use and not a seasonal use?
Well, Keith and I spoke about this today. I think there's two really large factors that go into that. There was only one hotel when this was all built. Now there are two. They have to be really nice large hotel right out of our yard. So that probably discourages some people from driving a trailer of whatever community they're making to come to track. And then from my time here, the majority of the event-based rental happening at the RV park were more in line with horse events. When there was 5 or 6 horse events a year, I think we probably saw more use over there because of that trailer. But I think the hotels might have the largest impact.
Do you have a sense, Tom, of what percentage of the overall park is currently being utilized for people attending track-related events versus all other categories?
I couldn't give you a percentage and feel confident in that number. I've never said that and did that math, but I would be shocked if it was a large enough number to even discuss.
Well, times and needs do change. You can't assume that everything that was in place at the time it was built necessarily still applies.
Correct.
Keith, do the revenues from the cell towers, those leases, does that accrue to the RV park or for an expense?
It comes to the RV park in the revenue, form of revenue.
Okay.
It's transferred.
There is one of the, talking about those towers now, there's one of them that sheets blew off. What are they going to do with that? It's not very nice looking sight when you go by and
From my understanding, they're changing the tower.
So they're hanging on, okay, waiting for it.
They upgraded the tower. They put in more wires than what they could fit in there. They tried putting the panels back on, and unfortunately it busted free of that, and they came down. So they want to make sure they don't come falling down again. So they're going to actually enlarge the size of the top of the tower.
Okay, so they're working on that.
Yep.
I know it's a safety issue. They just decided to leave the panels on.
Yeah, exactly, because they blew up again. They flew way to the park and backyard of somebody's there. And it would have went out the street or something. It could have been a disaster if it would have hit anybody. But anyway, I think that's good that we take care of that.
Yeah.
Tom, are we doing anything in the track kitchen to surplus kitchen equipment that we aren't going to need?
Right now, we're not just trying to figure out exactly what's going to be needed and what's not going to be needed. We will be. We just haven't gone down that road yet.
Anything else?
Tom, if you, this is a question you can't answer, so I'm just going to look for an opinion, okay? If you were to raise the rentals at the RV park 10%, how many vacancies do you think you'd have in 3 months?
I think we have a lot of threats. We probably have more threats than actual vacancies. Keith can jump in and tell me if I'm wrong. I really don't think it would impact us that much. Just probably even people that have been there for a very long time and the comfort level of being there.
How many spaces do we have?
46, full hookup, 59 total.
46. You said 46?
Yes, 46 with full hookup.
46, how many of those are usually been there for more than 3 months?
Roughly 33.
So a 10% increase is going to add 40,000 to your bottom line in revenue. Okay. And we'd still be, when you figure in the value of electricity, especially in the winter, we'd still be cheaper than the folks across the street.
I think that's what we decided years ago, is to stay at, at least the same, if not higher, than across the street. Like I say, don't have the amenities that they do, but I think the people, obviously, that are staying at our facility aren't looking for them, or they'd be across the street.
Or the amenities that they value are a different type, like walking distance to Walmart and Lowe's and retail stores.
Smaller.
Quieter, smaller. And the fireworks at Giza Stadium.
Yeah. Don't have to pay for parking at the ball field.
If we're talking about KOA, aren't they you got to be a club member? I mean, can these people move over now?
No, that just gives you a discount rate.
Discount rate, yeah. I wonder what the full rate is opposed to the discount rate. Are we talking about
it's
discount
typically
rate?
over daily. The monthly rates, they don't apply discounts, neither can we, because it's just a monthly rate.
Most of the KOA people are just transit, traveling through.
Right.
So,
vacation.
Again, you said we have 46 spaces and 33 of those are long-term?
33 of those are long-term, over 3 months, or over 6 months at this time. Total, usually, we average about 36, 37. That way I can keep enough spaces available for any events at the track.
Are you turning away business that's not track event related to keep those spaces open?
No.
Then how are you keeping those spaces open?
I don't allow monthly into those spaces. They're allowed to be for whatever comes through. If it's for track 10, they give us a call pretty quick.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the discussion. It's a good refresher, and I appreciate, Keith, your obvious research to know these numbers. And it's good. It's what we're looking for.
Thank you, sir.
And like I say, as we were discussing, I don't think it would be out of place to, internally at least discuss a 10%.
We will.
Yeah,
I'll keep you know that.
Yeah, when we had this conversation about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a consensus of the board that we would occasionally, and we probably should define that, but we would on a regular basis be looking at the market and figuring out what other people are charging and making sure that we minimize our direct competition as much as possible by keeping ourselves at the top of the rate structure, even if it costs us to have some vacancies. And two things tell me that we're not doing that. One is, I don't hear anybody saying we are, and two, we don't have any vacancies to speak of. I mean, we've got some daily ones, but if you turn those into seasonal or long-term, I suspect they'd fill up pretty fast.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
What I see is we have a different animal than we do across there because, like you said, the transit, they move in, they're traveling to where these guys are more, it's more like almost a mobile park in some senses.
Well, I think across the street is too.
It's both.
Both? Or just like, okay.
Yeah. I've driven through the KOA park multiple times. I've counted their spaces. I've printed out Google Earth maps, overheads, and looked at their structure. I mean, I've invested a fair amount of energy into understanding their business model, where they are, how much they charge. I've been through the convenience store. I've gotten their price sheets. I've done a lot of this market research myself for a variety of reasons, but it's given me some insight that few of these parks, if any, are directly comparable. Each one has their own little feature or dynamic, whether it's accessibility to the freeway, whether it's gravel versus pavement, grass versus pavement, whether the grass is green or yellow in the summer. You know all this stuff, and so you can't directly compare. My interest is making sure that we aren't taking money, tax dollars, from whoever owns KOA and other facilities and using their tax money to take business away from them. You've heard me sing that song for years now, so I won't do it again, but my personal preference is that we are by no means the cheapest, and frankly, I just assume we'd be the most expensive. And if you're the most expensive and you're reserving spaces for the track folks, if they're attending a track event and they've got a receipt or something to show that, then I wouldn't be opposed to discounting back to them part of their fee. That way you are providing a benefit and inducement for people to use that facility for track events. But if they're there on a day or a monthly or a seasonal and they're not utilizing track, then they ought to be paying the full rate, highest in town. Just my opinion.
And we will quickly, before obviously we were going to do this before the year turns over, we'll readjust and take a look at the fees and we'll get that information.
This isn't a busy time of year for you anyway, is it?
Not much at all.
Okay. Well, for what it's worth, I appreciate the fact that it's not an easy job to run a facility like that, and the willingness to take on change in an effort to make things better deserves credit. I mean, oftentimes we talk about change and we take these things on and we just act like the risk is no big deal. We'll see what happens, but the risk is a big deal. It takes courage and it takes a lot of effort. So I appreciate your willingness to suck up that part of it, knowing that ultimately you guys are the ones that are probably going to be looked at in terms of do we succeed or not, even though you're constrained by the policies that we make. So if you fail, it's on us. If you win, it's on you. How's that?
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it looks like we are back here at 9 a.m. for Public Works tomorrow morning. So, anybody have anything else at this point?
No, not me, thanks.
Okay, Karen, you can hold a pin.